Greetings, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending upon where you are today. We are now in our fourth installment of the Journey into Agile with Inflectra series. This webinar is focusing on the top 5 techniques for managing programs and portfolios. I'm sure many of you know me already. My name is Sriram Rajagopalan. For those of you that are just starting this webinar alone, I want to give you a quick introduction. My name is Dr. Sriram Rajagopalan. I'm currently working as Enterprise Agile Evangelist. I have my doctorate degree in organizational leadership through project management, a number of other graduate degrees as well. And I started my career as a software engineer, moved along as a team leader, business systems analyst, project manager, scrum master, agile coach, and I have been serving in the capacities of director and vice president as well. A number of different certifications to my credentials. Recently, I'm very proud to announce that I published my book called Organized Common Sense. It's available in Amazon right now. And I have served in a number of facilitating capacity with countries in the United States, India, UK, Canada, Switzerland, Brazil, and Vietnam. That's in a nutshell about me. Today's webinar is part of our fourth webinar pod series. Each webinar is approximately about 1 hour long. We will reserve time at the end for any questions. The webinars may sometimes use the concept by introducing a tool. In today's webinar, I'm not planning to introduce any specific tool per se, but I will be talking about a number of different techniques and tools that can be applied depending upon the technique that you are choosing to apply. And there are 4 webinars in our fourth webinar series right now. So today's going to be focusing on the techniques to manage programs and portfolios. We will then follow up with metrics in the brand new world of programs and portfolios. What are the metrics to use? And then my approach for Scream for Scrum or Scream at Scrum, what's going on. And then we are going to be talking why is setting up a PMO necessary, even with all the growth of agile approaches. Again, the first thing I want to talk about is why do we need programs or portfolios in the first place, right? So we have been having projects, and projects by definition is supposed to be a unique a temporary endeavor to produce a unique product, service, or result, right? And so having a small tree, growing a small tree is pretty good as a small project. It's very good, and we don't need to have too much worry about it as long as you are able to take care of that. But as soon as you start talking in terms of growing a forest, full of multiple trees, protecting the environment and all those things, you have a lot of other things to start focusing on. So they're all related still. They are still further related because you are still focusing on getting the trees and making sure that the environment is protected and things like that. But you are having some related projects that could benefit from a coordinated effort. That could be the program. That will most likely be the program. But as you start moving much more into taking care of that experience and ensuring all trees are protected and there is no outbreak of the viruses that can impact the trees and all those things. Now you are looking into a lot more about portfolios and things like that. Like, how do I maintain not only the forest, but also the trees across the entire community and how they are related to the communities across other areas and all those things. So you're looking at a lot more additional things. So in a nutshell, that's simply nothing more than a project, program, and portfolio approach. So you can just like that take your project management approach and move forward with programs and portfolios. And you need different ways of looking at programs and portfolios. Granted, projects are the basics for programs and portfolios, but you need a little bit of a different variety of techniques and tools. That's where our programs come into the play, our webinar comes into the play. So let's get them grounded again one more time. So by definition, project is the foundation for programs. A program is supposed to be made up of a number of different projects and also additional operational activities. And then you have portfolio, which is going to be a lot of sub-programs and sub-portfolios and additional projects and things like that. Along with that, you are having some non-project work activities and operational activities and things like that. So let's take a look at this. Project, by definition, it's managing the efforts to develop some specific scope so that you are able to address the program or the portfolio with a defined capability, right? We are changing a slight nomenclature around how we are defining the project at this point. It's still a temporary endeavor to produce a unique product, service, or result, but that serves the program. Right? And then when you look at the program, it's a coordinated management of related projects to achieve a specific strategic business value. So if you look at the talent triangle, that's one of the reasons why strategy becomes a foundational element of the actual talent triangle. Right? And then as you are looking at the differences, how are these projects and programs actually connected? So they are both connected by the level of change and the level of uncertainty that you are going to associate with. By project, it's a small effort and then you are able to move forward. But, there's a lot more uncertainty that comes up. And so how do you manage the uncertainty along with all the different things that comes with inter-project dependencies and things like that? That's going to be some of the things that differentiate a program from a project. But when you look at the portfolio, it is identifying, selecting, prioritizing, optimizing, constantly balancing different programs and different projects that provide an ultimate strategic enterprise value, not just as business value, but strategic enterprise value. So all the different business entities are all part of the strategic enterprise, and how do you actually promote a larger holistic system-wide value proposition. And when you're looking at that, there's two additional concepts that keep coming up. That's going to be relatedness and time. These projects that you will be working on within the portfolio, or the programs that you will be working within a portfolio, may not be necessarily related, but that's our fundamental definition of program. All the projects are related. And so the program management gives you the benefit of how do you orchestrate everything together that are related. But when it comes to portfolio, all the different things that you are having may or may not be related. As a result, time has a longer time span in terms of how you manage these portfolios. It's not going to be like a 1 year portfolio that you are going to be talking about. You are looking at 3 to 5 years. A larger scale. Okay, those are some of the fundamental elements that differentiate projects. But if you are not actually spending enough time in understanding how program and project portfolio management work, there are some recent studies that have recently come up. The most recent I could go is in 2018 from a PMI study that basically said how much money is getting wasted by region for every billions of dollars that that country is spending. When you look at that, the story tells portrays a different picture. If you look at this, US is looking about 102. So $102 million is getting wasted for every billion. That's almost 10% is getting wasted. Right. So we need to look at how we can manipulate and understand all these areas so that we are able to properly prioritize the projects and programs and make sure that everything is getting done correctly. Right. When you are looking at that from that aspect. So what are some of the critical pillars for program and portfolio management? We know the 10 knowledge areas of project management, and so we are now trying to move away from that and build on that. In fact, not move away from that, but build on it. So when you look at that, the few knowledge areas are going to be program level and portfolio level life cycle management. Okay, those are coming up. And then the strategy alignment, because without the strategy alignment, everything is gone. Because remember, we talked about strategic business value and the strategic enterprise value. And then benefits, what are benefits and how do we manage them? And then getting into the stakeholders, there are different categories and groups of stakeholders that come into play, and how do we engage them, not just manage them, but engage them. And then we are also talking about governance, like what are the principles and how do you go about ensuring this is the right initiative to move forward with, this is not the right initiative now, but later, but not at all, and all those governance elements that comes into that decision making. So when you look at the strategy alignment, you are looking at the business value. What is the business value for us and how do we move forward? And then we are looking at putting together some kind of a roadmap that tells us where we are going. But when you look at the benefits management, one of the tools that they are coming up with, this technique that we are coming up with, is a benefits register and the benefits realization plan. What is the benefits that we have to deliver, and what is your game plan to actually deliver that? Nothing's it's not difficult from all the things that we have already used to. So this is my goal, but here is my individual development plan to achieve that particular goal. Similar to that, a benefits register and a benefits realization plan. And then the stakeholder engagement assessment, what level they are. Are they unaware about this, or are they a complete supporter of this? Are they somewhere in between, neutral? So are they opposed, or are they a supporter, or they champions? So what level are they in, and then try to understand that. And from a project standpoint, this could be relatively simple. I'm not saying it's easy. Relatively simple, because it's of the temporary nature. A few select set of people that you're working with. But when the concept of time is expanding, people may come and go, different people may come, and existing people may get promoted or take on different roles and all those things. So you have to understand that engagement, so how are they actually engaged? You have to assess that constantly and have a game plan. As a result, we actually move forward with stakeholder map, not just a simple power influence grid or interest grid. You want to go a little bit higher than that and look at stakeholder map. And then when it comes to governance, what are some of the things that you are prioritizing? What is important to the business and why? And then, what is a stage gate review, like, a formal approach as to how you are evaluating the progress and, providing the appropriate funding to move forward, or the go ahead to, continue with the development and initiatives. And as part of the life cycle management, you are looking at both optimization. Is this the right way to do it? Is this the right approach to mix it and do this? Or what are all the different initiatives that we have to put our spend our time and energy on? And then constantly looking at what are some of the risks that are coming up, both internal and external risks, and then try to figure out how to change the business strategy. Once the business strategy changes, we start the cycle completely again. This is program management. But then when you try to introduce the portfolio management aspect of it, we add two additional elements. None of these things go away, but then we add a couple more additional dimensions, which is going to be performance management. Performance management in terms of how are some of the resources performing? How are we constantly managing to the supply and demand that we have to come up with? What business value we are trying to emulate constantly. How are things changing in the marketplace that we have to change our business model? Or once the business model changes, the business value proposition changes, and everything changes. Similarly, about the communication, so portfolio level analysis. How do you analyze all the different initiatives, the value that they bring to the table, at what cost? And then try to communicate what we are doing, how we are doing, why we are doing, and all those things. So all these elements come into the program and portfolio management. And a few techniques I'm going to pick right from here and say, okay, these are the top 5 techniques that in my experience I have found them to be really useful, depending upon the complexity of the project or the program or the portfolio that we are trying to work on. So what are those 5 important techniques at this point? So when you look at them, the first technique is going to be the roadmap. It applies at the program and portfolio level. The second one is going to be benefits registers, mainly at the program level. It starts from there. The third one is a technique called efficient frontier, which is used primarily at the portfolio level. And the fourth one is going to be sensitivity analysis. It is applicable at even project level, program, and portfolio levels. And finally, the portfolio balancing, it primarily at the portfolio level, because it's at the strategic enterprise business value. So not putting them in a particular order or sequence, but I'm going to be talking in the same particular sequence so that I'm able to cover all of them. So roadmap is fundamentally meant to engage the middle management so that we are able to liaise both with the senior management and the other program level team, program operational team, the project, individual project teams, and all the different things. So primarily it's aligning stakeholders on a larger scale. So what are we aligning on? Right. So when you are looking at this, the roadmap is supposed to be a chronological and a visual representation. We need to know where we are going. We need to know exactly the process we are going to take. So we need to have that view, right? Even in those agile approaches, we really have to say our minimum viable product is going to go this long, and this is where we are looking at, but our entire vision is this. Right, we're not going to suddenly build a rocket ship now and then a few weeks later we are going to build a ship that's going to be cruising on the water. Right, we need to know exactly what we are trying to do over here. So this one will capture dependencies between program activities, right? Different programs and program level activities and the benefits, because one of the key important element is going to be benefits. So that leads us into the next one, which is going to be the benefits register. And the second one is going to be, it needs to show the direction. What is the direction we are going? So 3 years from now, where will I be? 1 year from now, where will I be? 6 months from now, where will I be? So the short, the mid, and the long-term goal, I need to know that. And depending upon that, we also have to start thinking in terms of how much money is required now. What kind of skill set and competencies are required today, and 3 years from now will the same thing be the thing that will be required, and 5 years from now will it be the same. So we need to constantly looking at what is the direction we are going, and also bring all the company resources along, whether it is technical resources like infrastructure, facilities, equipment, materials, supplies, and all those things, or it's going to be the people-based resources that needs to actually, deliver the work for us and take the vote for us, right? The third one is going to be the strategy alignment, constantly looking at the market forces and see what's changing as a result of that, coming back and looking at all these additional things. And as a result of those additional things, you may be looking at other sensitivity analysis or portfolio balancing and all those other techniques, but this is how everything feeds into the thing. So it demonstrates our strategic alignment towards benefits transition as well as sustainment. Can we sustain this benefit in the long run or not? At what point enough is enough that we have to pull back? So we need to know that from a roadmap perspective. And the roadmap cannot be completely flushed out, but it needs to be flushed out enough so that we are able to mobilize the organizational resources towards that strategy. Right, here is an example of how a roadmap looks like, on a different scale. So when you're looking at a detailed level, somewhat detailed level, I'm not talking at the project level where you may be using a Gantt chart. Here I'm talking about, what are all the releases that I am planning and what deliverables are coming out of those deliverables. As part of that, what are some of those key important dates that I have to know about? Publicizing that more informatively, and then what are some of the documentation and training that I have to think about for different groups of users, which is different from the actual delivery of the product or the deliverables. Right now you are thinking at a very high level. So when you look at the blue color dialogue at the top, the releases, that's primarily what an agile focuses on. But those benefits have to be integrated, and the product has to be merged, and different milestones about funding, and all those things have to be integrated. All those things are still required at the program and portfolio level. And so now you start introducing what is called a milestone that basically says, I need so much investment, 25% of the budget available at the initial thing, and then as functionality is getting released, I need so much money, and different dates that drive how payments and fundings are going to be accommodated at the program level. Okay, that's one approach of the somewhat medium level program roadmap. Sometimes people will develop a simple milestone chart, and if you're managing all these initiatives in Excel or project, or in different tools like Spira or Jira, all those things, you can consolidate these things and say these are the milestone I'm looking at, and chronologically order them and say how much we are committed to reaching that functionality in terms of resources, and what are we trying to mobilize and talk and socialize still about how to start working on those things, and those kind of approaches. So a milestone chart could also be used as you are getting a little bit more detailed in terms of how you work with different projects and program members at this point. So summarizing, a roadmap is fundamentally telling what's working. So it ensures that alignment to strategy as well as the projected project resource needs. We need to have certain types of skill set or certain technology platform available at certain period in time. So we are projecting that, and then also finding out what's blocking or what is actually preventing us from achieving our fullest. At that point, multiple projects, all of them are equally important. bandwidth associated with resources, and the gaps and assumptions that we are making, the funding needs, the lack of training, people on learning wheels, all those things come into factor over here in terms of how we are talking about this. So you can put some color-coded discussions to say we want to talk about this because we cannot continue onto this element of our roadmap primarily because we are stuck, right? And then what's not working? So in this particular thing, we have things that are provided to us, but that's not working. Maybe the tools are provided to us are not the right tools. We have way too many tools where we are having everything in siloed fashion, or the team members are not connected, or we are saying like because of the lack of funding, we are going to not have a product owner, and the Scrum Master will serve as a project manager, the product owner it's also, and the product owner is unavailable to both of them. So these are all challenges that they evolve over here. So elevating risk and promoting accountability. So that's the fundamental goal of the governance that roadmap actually helps to unearth. The second one is the benefits register. Okay, so whenever we are talking about benefits, we want to make sure that it is aligned to the value. So strategy has the value, and from the value you are coming up with a lot of different benefits, right? So it brings everyone together with a focus on delivery and operational excellence. You may have delivered something, but if that is not working, or if that is not fitting the purpose for which it was originally designed, then you cannot say that you can put a check mark and say I am done. You still have to figure out how to get these things corrected. So we need to have a focus on the benefits as a register. So have we delivered this benefit, right? So when you look at that, you need to come back to the essential needs. And I'm not talking just about the project needs or the backlog and things like that. Go back to the actual users and the organization, right? Without putting our focus on the persona, user stories, use cases, all those things, we need to come back to what projects, programs, and portfolios are fundamentally doing. So projects at the basic level are creating deliverables, which are outputs. Right? Those outputs are called capabilities. Now I have this capability, but those capabilities all have to be consolidated, coordinated before it gives you, some kind of a value. And that's the simplest value that you are looking at, right? Now, projects are part of the programs, and programs are focusing on outcomes. Like a lot of different projects are coming together, and all those projects are getting mixed up, and you are now trying to provide the outcome. And those outcomes should be the one that is actually giving you the measurable benefits. Now, a simple thing to associate is our benefits, the personal benefits that we all get from the company. If you only get the medical benefits, but not the life insurance, or if you get only the life insurance benefits, but not the accidental life, dismemberment, or if we get none of those things, but we actually get something else about 401k, retirement benefits. Now, everything has to be present. It needs to be a full package. I'm not going to pick and choose right from there. We have to make the benefits available for everybody at this point, and let individual users figure out what is best for them, and what are the best combinations of things. Now, similar concept is what the benefits are. So you need to generate a lot more additional projects, and multiple projects have to interrelate, and then the coordinated benefits have to come together, and that's the awesome value. So programs are focusing on outcomes and the benefits. Now, portfolio on the other hand is looking at a higher value, more higher value. All of us are serving in this capacity with all the benefits, primarily because we need to make sure that the performing organization succeeds well. When they succeed well, we are going to succeed well as well, because we will get all those additional bonuses and all those things, career promotions and all those things that will come with that, brand recognition of our company and things like that. So all those things are coming into the play here, right? So the realized benefits must actually tied to the strategic objectives, and so programs should cater to the strategic objectives. And if they are focusing at the business level, it is a program. If it's going to be looking at a larger enterprise level, then it's going to be the portfolios. So you need to look at the needs and fundamental needs that needs to be met. So when you look at that, benefits should not be treated as the same as deliverables, because we talked about this, it is capabilities, right? So there are three types of benefits, categories of benefits that we can say. One is going to be the incremental benefits. You develop something today. Agile talks about, the program increment, where we are able to actually potentially release it to the production and to the customer. right? It may or may not be the case. Some organizations may be driven by compliance and regulations and legal requirements that we cannot just like that go ahead and release every working software at the end of every iteration, right? So there may be some incremental benefits that may be released, that may not be released. And then the next one is going to be consolidated benefits. The consolidated benefits is as part of coordinating all the benefits together. You are combining all of them from all the different initiatives, projects, sub-projects, and all those things. And then you are pushing it towards the end of that program, telling like, okay, now we have everything. So that's the consolidated benefits that we are talking about. The third one is going to be recurrent benefits. Sometimes the actual program has to be funded by itself. And so you have to release certain functionality out to the customer, make sure that you are generating some revenues, and those revenues are the one that is actually going to support your project. It's not going to be funded by an external organization or a client or somebody like that. You have to fund yourself. If that's the case, then you have to have a plan as to when you are going to release the functionality, what's the gap when you are going to have the revenues come in, and how will you justify what the revenues are, and then reuse those revenues for ongoing product and program development. Right? These are all things that you have to keep in mind as you are looking at whatever delivery framework of choice that you are having, whether it's Agile, Scrum, or program management, project management, Prince2, or whatever it is. You have to look at all those elements. Okay. Now, benefits itself has a life cycle. Okay. Now, although I have mentioned this in a linear fashion, it's a cyclic approach. It's an iterative approach because you don't know what you don't know, because you are constantly going to release some functionality and then gather input and make some refinements. So the first process is going to be identifying what is it that we have to deliver from a benefit standpoint. So in that strategic objective is decomposed into what are the different benefits, and then analyze them and properly plan, put a plan in place, and then start working together to implement those benefits and deliver those benefits, whether it is incremental, recurrent, or consolidated, right? And then benefits transition. So once you have done with this work, you have to give it to the appropriate transition team who is going to take over. Right, then the benefit sustainment comes in, where those teams that are taking over has to now make sure that those benefits are continuously being realized. If not, it's going to be useless, right? So when you look at this, there are a lot of things that go into the play. So identify and qualify the benefits. We can start talking about quantification also here, but qualify. The main purpose here is to create what is called a benefits register, similar to a risk register or a stakeholder register that you may have already known from a project management thing. You are creating a benefits register, which basically says these are all the things that I'm going to generate as part of my my programs. Now, prioritize those benefits as to what is the most important one. That's where you are trying to associate with minimum viable product. And then update the benefits register appropriately with the metrics that you are going to use for measurement. And as part of your delivery, you are constantly maintaining the benefits register. And then in the transition, you are consolidating all of them to make sure that you are transferring the responsibility to the appropriate individual, delegation of the responsibility. And then as part of the sustainment, you are telling how to monitor it in the operation for the operational excellence, so that you are able to self-fund the project moving forward from that aspect onward. Right. So what are some of the elements of the benefits register that you have to maintain? Okay, so there are 5 important categories that I have come down with. And the first one is going to be the benefit itself. What is the benefit? In other words, who is going to get the benefit? What groups of stakeholders are going to get this? And what's the business need behind this particular benefit? And the business impact of either non-delivery or non-compliance. Right, everything has a cost, so you have to basically start qualifying and quantifying those kind of things. This is how I'm trying to move forward, right? And then the next one is going to be the measurement. You need to come down with 2 or 3 critical metrics that you want to use to measure whether you are generating the value or not. In other words, I have released a functionality, but how do I evaluate whether I have got this functionality? How many people are buying the product? How much it is generating revenue in every different region, how many complaints are coming. So you need to look at a lot of additional elements to figure out those things. Then the frequency and measuring method. What is the specific method you are going to use? Is it payback period or net present value, or customer satisfaction? If it is customer satisfaction, you're using a net present score. What specifically that? And then the frequency. You're not going to measure every day. You're not going to measure every week. What are the frequent points that you are going to measure? So the last what would be business day of the month, or the middle of the quarter. So you have to come down with the specific days you are going to measure, accumulate, and all those things. So specific elements of how do you go about measurement. The next one is going to be value. What was your projected baseline? By doing this project, what were you expecting? That's your baseline. And you need to have that. This is not the status quo indicator. This is more of the forecasting indicator. By doing this, this is what I will do. I will generate. In other words, by releasing this functionality, we are expecting to have $500,000, in increased profit or increased sale. Then what is the expected value? What's the gap? Why did it not work out the way it is, or why did it go beyond your expectation? And then the tolerance. What is the expected threshold for different people to accept or not accept those benefits? And identification. When do you think a potential issue is going to happen, and how do you know that this is happening? One person giving a poor rating for your product in the Apple Store is not going to be the end or be all. But if 100 people are giving, and 200 people are talking about this, and that's going viral, then that's that's an issue, right? So what are some of those things? And the next one is going to be the risk. What are the potential barriers that is going to impede your benefits realization, right? And when are you going to reassess those risks? Because the risks are not going to be always static. As the project continues to move forward, some risks may have to be retired, some risks have to be reevaluated, some new risks have to be added, secondary risks have to be identified and added. So you need to truly understand what are some of those things. So having some placeholders in the benefits registers for these things will help. So that's the second approach of program and portfolio management. Now, the third one is going to be a technique called efficient frontier. Just like the space, the final frontier analogy, I use the space over here. But fundamentally, the efficient frontier is all about selecting the best optimal option available. Best optimal option means you have so many different options. So from all those so many options, you have to pick one of the best. That's going to give you the best return on investment, right? That's what you are focusing on when you are looking at efficient frontier. And it's a very involved, heavily mathematical approach, but I'm trying to do my best to simplify this in the context of program and portfolio management over here. So let's talk about what is that looking like. It's a portfolio optimization technique. Now, given all these other initiatives, given all the different options, which option do I move forward with? So obviously, you are looking at what's the best thing that you want to get. And so that's why it's called an optimization technique within the portfolio management umbrella. So portfolio optimization has two different things. You can either focus on maximizing the overall portfolio value. You don't want to give up anything, but you want to do as many as possible to make sure that you are getting the maximum benefit, the overall maximum benefit. When you are looking at this, oftentimes people use what is called a scenario analysis. How much can I do this and that? What's the probability of this happening? So 25%. What is the probability of that's happening? 50%. So I have a maximum of 100% available. So here I will put 25%. Here I will put 50%. Another 25%. I'll probably keep as a slack for me to manage my bandwidth and things like that. So you are coming up with approaches, the 80-20 rule and things like that. So you are looking at scenario analysis. What is going to happen? What's the impact and all those things? People get into the level of severity and priority discussions and things like that, and they move into those things too. So these things you may be able to relate in terms of your expected monetary value, the EMV technique that you might have remembered from doing your risk management domain. So those things still apply over here. So different focuses are coming, and then you are approaching the qualitative risk analysis approach over here. The next one is going to be the single attribute. I want to make sure that this one little thing, maybe the profitability, maybe the customer satisfaction, maybe the market penetration, maybe the brand diversification, whatever it is, I just want to focus on that alone and see how I can maximize the best return on investment for this money. What can I do? So that's what's the best option I will have available. So that is where efficient frontier comes in. So efficient frontier focuses on one little attribute. How do you maximize, and not the overall thing? Okay. Now, efficient frontier is all about increasing productivity, because that there is a lot of sayings these days that tells that multitasking is really not helpful, because if you are working on multiple things, you are not having focus on any one of those things. So similar approach over here. You want to make sure that you are focusing on one thing and getting it done. So efficient here focuses on productivity. What do we mean by productivity over here? That's also, oftentimes not necessarily completely understood, and it's very subjective term. And from an efficient frontier portfolio optimization standpoint, if productivity means I am able to generate more output for the same amount of input, right? Or I am having the same amount of output, but for less amount of input. So lesser the input, the same the output, or more the output for the same amount of input. That's what we are trying to think in terms of productivity over here. Okay, so let's illustrate it with a simple example. So here is a scenario I have presented. There is two options that we can choose from. One is A, one is B. The overall cost, the value for the business is, for option A, it's going to be $100 million, and option B, it's going to be $60 million. And the overall cost that we need to, nothing comes free, right? So we have to invest some money to actually get this thing, and we have to invest $50 million for option A and $15 million for option B. Now, the benefit cost ratio, or the return on investment, is going to be the value that you have got divided by the cost, which is going to be 2 for A and 4 for B. Now, when you look at this, there are two options that are presented. Which one you go with, A or B? So if you go with overall product value or portfolio value, then you will select A, because how much more money I'm going to get? $100 million. I'm going to get $100 million. So I would go with A. If I go with B, I will only get $60 million. So I will not go with that, right? So I'm going to go with option A if I choose the maximum portfolio value. Whereas if I go with the next one, which is going to be the cost value to the cost approach, then I will go with B, because I need to only put $15 million to generate 4 times the cost, the value. Whereas with respect to A, I had to put $50 million to double the value. So I'm getting 4 times the value or 2 times the value. Which one do you want to go with? 4 times the salary or 2 times the salary? Obviously you want to go with the 4 times. So here you would go with the B, right? So which one you want to go with here? So that's the approach that we are trying to look for in the terms of efficient frontier. So here the portfolio A is not on the cost efficient curve. It's good, it's giving you a good value, but it's not on the cost efficient curve. So if I focus on cost as my efficient frontier element, then I will not choose A, right? So how does this actually work? Again, as I told you, this is a very mathematical modeling. I'm trying to make it as simple as possible here. So let's take a look at this. So we are having 6 different options, and we are coming up with different proportions. Again, this is why it's very mathematical. So option 1, that's the only one I will choose. That means it's 100% probability. If I choose option A, then I'm never option 1 with 100% probability. Then I'm never going to choose anything else. But if I choose 90% of option A of a particular option, and then I have 10% to choose something else. Similarly, if I choose 76% of that option, I can choose 24% to something else. For half, 50-50, so 25-25. So weight B is 100% probability minus the proportion of time that you are committing yourselves for weight A. So weight A and weight B. So you basically come up with this, and then the return. So somebody has to do some market analysis to come back and say, if we do this, this is what our expected return is going to look like. So we have to do that. We know the cost. this is the amount of cost we are going to put, and then basically we are saying like if I put $200 and focus only on this, the return that will be 12%. So you are coming up with all these numbers, and now you have a simple grid. Now when you map this, the efficient frontier will looks like this. Okay, it's quite a lot of modeling, as I mentioned to you before. So here you are basically saying risk versus return. So in this particular one, what you are telling is, each and every one of those points over here, options 1, 2 to 6, are all represented here as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 over here. So when you take a look at this, the option 1, if you do that alone, so for 20% of the risk, you are getting 12% of return. Right now, if you don't want to live with that kind of a risk, you can go to the next one, which is going to be somewhere like a lower percentage of return, like let's say 18% over here, if I can read that quickly. Then you are going to increase it from 12 to 12.8%. Now, if you go to the third one, which is going to be the minimal risk that you can take. So you have to take risk. With no risk, there is no option at all. So if you are going to take the minimal risk that is available over here, then that is going to be this. That's going to be the third option. And let's say if that's going to be somewhere in between 15, then for 15%, you are going to get about 13.92 or 14% of return. That's the best option. So for the least amount of cost investment that you have to do, the maximum you can get is 14. But you can take this particular one too. So for instance, instead of doing this 20%, if you go through this approximately over here, so instead of the same bullet point over here, for this amount of risk, you have a higher risk. You can choose this option. Nothing prevents you from doing this, so you can choose this option and completely eliminate this. But that means you are increasing the risk. This is not the best option. You are picking consciously some other option. Obviously, you could pick this last option, which is going to give you the highest percentage of yield. Yeah, you can pick this, but for that you have increased the highest return risk also. So risk versus reward. So here, what I'm looking for is what's the best option I could pick, given that I have to reduce something, which is going to be my investment cost. That's how the efficient frontier. So obviously you are working only on one dimension. You are not trying to have multiple dimensions over here. Okay, that's a third technique that I recommend that you do. So option 3 gives you the best ROI for the minimum investment, which we talked about. So when you are looking at efficient frontier, a few things needs to be kept in mind. So what are those things? First of all, you need to have that market analysis. Where do you get this 12% return, 40% return on all those things? That needs to be some kind of market intel that you have to have. The market research has to provide this, or you have to engage in market research to get this information, right? We have talked about a lot of SWOT analysis and all those things before. Those things are all things to keep in mind over here, not to be forgotten, right? The second one is going to be the risk appetite versus risk tolerance. So risk appetite is at the organizational level. What does the company want to live with? Not you as an individual stakeholder or as a business unit. As a company, what is the amount of risk exposure that they are able to digest? What's acceptable for them. But then the tolerance is that as an individual stakeholders within that program, what is your tolerance? So now you have to understand appetite as an organization versus tolerance as a stakeholders. You have to understand both of them, because then in the decision or governance make a decision when they are trying to say, let's go with option 1 or option 6 or things like that, then all these things will come into play. Right, so you need to have that, and it's a very heavy mathematical modeling, because I gave you small numbers like 1.5 and all those things very quickly. You can come up with lots of different weightages, right? And so if you have multiple, if you don't want to only choose 2 and you want to have the potential of working with 3, then the way you have weight A, B, and C added. So you can pretty soon see that it's going to become very heavily large Excel. If you want to keep that as number of columns and number of things, so you are coming up with number of things. So it's a really mathematical modeling based approach. You can even compare that with, to some extent, the Monte Carlo simulation that you might have seen in the quantitative approaches in risk management. Okay. So let's go on to the fourth one, which is going to be the sensitivity analysis. Now you need to be able to take risk. The reason why I picked this particular graphic is, in Serengeti, the animals are actually constantly, moving forward, crossing the river. the river is flooded with crocodiles, and they have the opportunity to either go to a greener pasture, or you get wounded by those predators, right? And so you still have to do that, right? At the end of the day, they have to live their life. So manage risk before it manages you. So this is where you have to be a little bit more factual about taking calculated risks. So how do we approach that aspect over here? So here we are amplifying risk management, simple information that we did. From there, we are moving forward. So you need to have multiple scenarios too. So you cannot do sensitivity analysis without completely doing scenario analysis. They have some symbiosis together. So you do the scenario analysis, what are some of those things, and then move forward with sensitivity analysis. Remember, qualitative risk management is really mandatory, whereas quantitative risk analysis becomes optional, even in project management terms. So scenario analysis is giving that, and sensitivity analysis is taking it a step further. Now, both of them are focused on one thing, validating the assumptions. It's all about the what if analysis, or assumptions analysis, as people frequently call. You are looking at assumptions and validating them, and what if they are not going to be true? Then risk is going to come into play, right? So on the scenario analysis, you are using a lot more discrete probability, like the low, medium, high. Low means 25%, and lower. High means anything over 75%, and lower than 90%. Anything over 90% is critical. So you're coming up with some kind of a categorization of probability over here. Whereas when it comes to sensitivity analysis, which we demonstrated before in the efficient frontier, is continuous probability. There is a difference between 74% and 75%. Right. So when you are doing these kind of things, you are looking at a few additional things. What are we trying to do here? What's the fundamental need for this, right? So you are answering three important questions whenever you are going before management, steering committee, quarterly business review, program steering committee meetings, and all those things, health check meetings, and all those things. You are trying to answer these three questions. What are the most critical variable that can influence the aggregate portfolio value, the overall portfolio value? What are the things that I can control so that I will still manage the highest portfolio value I will? The next one is going to be, how might some of the changes impact the value or impede your portfolio level success? Now you are looking at the second one. The third important question that you have to answer is, to what extent is the value going to change? If it's going to change from 100% to 98%, I'm okay with that. But if it's going to change from 100 to 78%, I'm not going to be okay with that, right? So to what extent is the aggregate value going to change based upon what variables? So these are the things that you are truly trying to understand over here. And when you know these things, you are picking up the right variables so that you can move forward. But the process here is to try to find out understanding the sensitivity around these things. So you are forming some hypothesis here, and that hypothesis is the basis for your predictive analytics, right? So you want to have some data points, collect some, be factual about it, gather more information and things like that. Without that, you cannot go and do proper adequate market research, right? And so one of the tools that many people use here is called a tornado diagram, right? So you are looking at all the different things and say, if this happens, it has a possibility of earning total aggregate account value, market value to be, so much. So for instance, the duration of the technology penetration will be 40% high. Whereas if market signals don't work out and we don't, take advantage of all those things, then, we will lose 25% of the market share. So remember, risk is having both threats and opportunity. It's not just about threats, it's also about opportunity. So that's why you are trying to map both of them. If you take advantage of this, you can potentially get 40% of the technology, or you are going to lose 25% of it. What is your risk appetite here? And you are able to, move forward with that kind of an approach. So that you have to come up with these kind of approaches. Now, the challenge with sensitivity analysis, like we did over here, is its impact is studying by one critical variable. You are not looking at the dependencies among variables and all those things, because then it becomes difficult. And the market analysis as a result becomes very, very difficult. And that's one of the reasons why when in data analytics guys come and start working on these things, they will look at all the different dependency among the variables and all those things so that you're forming the right hypothesis, right? And that's very important. The next one is going to be the unit of measurement when you are mapping this in a tornado diagram has to be the same. So one cannot be measured in terms of time, one cannot be measured in terms of dollar value, and one cannot be expressed in percentage, and one cannot be expressed in some other unit. So the unit of measure has to be the same, right? If that's not going to be the same, you cannot put this in the proper tornado diagram and see the assessment for yourself, right? And decision-making protocols, we are not talking about how to make a decision over here, because that needs to be a separate discussion as part of the governance as to how you put together the proper protocols for evaluating the stakeholder tolerance level and put together the decision-making protocols. That needs to be completely separate. But this is one of the tools that actually helps in finding out visually what is in front of you, okay? And so applying sensitivity analysis really requires you to have an updated risk register. No risk register, then this is not going to be a helpful tool at all. The next one is going to be, you need to be balancing both threats and opportunities. If you only focus on the threats and never on the opportunities, you are not maximizing the opportunities that you will get. And the third one is you need to have some, develop financial acumen around the business value. What is the company generating, the voice of the business and the voice of the customer? You need to be able to quantify that in those terms also. So the best way to engage in the sensitivity analysis is you need to have those friends with data analytics and finance. Both of them needs to provide this information to you so that proper hypothesis can be formed and proper data points can be obtained and then analysis can be done. Right? Without that, this is not going to be a tool you will benefit from. And finally, balancing the portfolio. We all know that change is the only constant. Things are constantly changing. So remember, in portfolio world, we are looking at 3, 4, 5 years. So longer time span, we cannot predict everything. So we need to constantly look at the change in the environment and come back and start looking at how do you apply the Kaizen approach. So we talked about this in the lean methods, the continuous improvement protocols for operational excellence, right? When you are looking at that, the portfolio balancing need comes up. So you have to keep in mind a few important things, and particularly 3 things. The first one is going to be, this is a highly qualitative approach. Not everything can be immediately assessed quantitatively with some data points, right? So this has to foster a discussion. Some new technology is coming. Should we get into this or not? What's the market telling? How will the market react to this? So you have to actually have certain, facilitative discussions around this to brainstorm and gather ideas, right? Then you are moving to the next approach is going to be, how do I assess this? Why do I feel important, or why do I feel less important about these things? So remember, the market force assessment can be done in different ways. And one of the things that we had talked about is the PEST lead approach that I had recommended before, the political, environmental, societal, technical, legal, ethical, economical, and then demographic, all the different 8 things that you want to actually start looking at, right? And then the qualitative discussion should actually help you to move forward with some kind of a visual representation, because the good thing about qualitative discussion is that there's a lot of ideas coming up, but the bad thing about qualitative discussion is without a visual tool for everybody to capture the ideas, it's going to be lost. Right? So you need to have the short-term as well as the long-term orientation of these tools. And there are a lot of tools that are available. And I'm picking up a few things over here, saying like for strategic objective, what we call is a strategic alignment matrix, risk return profile, you can use a bubble chart. For product line changes, you can actually do a product matrix. Initiative changes or the direction of the initiative changes within an organization, you can use a portfolio level matrix again. The schedule impact and the cost impact can be evaluated by using a portfolio roadmap, which we demonstrated before. So I'm trying to bring everything into some simple chart to demonstrate this. There are so many tools that are available, but I'm just picking up one or 2 here. The most prevalent thing is going to be the BCG Matrix, the Boston Consulting Group Matrix. So here you are looking at the relative market share as well as the growth rate or the cost involvement over here. So you are looking at this and say, okay, now you have 4 quadrants, and where do I put my money in? So this is looking similar to the efficient frontier, like, now cash cow. If I look at this, for the lowest investment, I'm getting the highest cap. Okay, this is where I want to go. So, so you're looking at all the different things. Dogs, I don't want to spend the time over there. Whereas with respect to question mark, I really don't want to, go over there. So you're trying to find out like, where is my thing? And by actually putting different color coding or enlarging the size of those initiatives that I have labeled as A, B, C, D, E, you can actually say, which one I need to focus on. The market size, market opportunity there is very big. Should I really tap onto that? Should I not tap onto this? And all those things. Right, so star is going to be the high growth, but it may require some investment later. You can have the high growth but low share, which is the low, and then the cash cow, dog, and all those things. So different things come up over there. Okay, so to summarize those 5 important techniques: the roadmap, the benefits register, the efficient frontier, sensitivity analysis, and portfolio balancing approach. So all these 5 techniques are the most critical techniques that I have found to be helpful. And depending upon the specific organization, project, and all those things, the specific tool on how you apply those techniques can be different. So I'm not going into all the different tools, although I gave a few tools here and there. But those are your approaches behind how do you evaluate the specific value proposition that's going to come out of your strategy, and where are you going to get the most value for your investment. Okay, so I'm trying to wrap up over here. So if there are any course specific questions, please reach out to Ms. Dia at marketing@inflectra.com. And if there are anything relating to the content, please reach out to me at sriram@inflectra.com. Thank you very much for attending this webinar. If you have questions and you are still formulating the questions in your mind, please don't hesitate to email me. And we will catch up again in the next seminar. Thank you very much.